to a life of adventure, and that's been indicative of what my life.
The story of Pastor Charles Jenkins's sudden collapse unfolds like a powerful emotional storm that sweeps through an entire community. What began as a normal Sunday service quickly transformed into a moment that shook the foundation of the church, leaving everyone searching for answers, comfort, and hope. His fall at the pulpit didn't just interrupt a sermon. It exposed the vulnerability of a leader many believed could never falter. As the congregation spiraled from confusion to fear to prayer, the incident became bigger than one man's medical crisis. It sparked questions about spiritual responsibility, emotional burdens, physical limits, and the pressure placed on leaders who are expected to carry everyone else's weight. The moment of collapse inside the sanctuary. The sanctuary was alive with the usual vibrancy of a passionate Sunday morning, filled with worship, energy, and the warmth that comes from a united congregation. Everything felt beautifully routine until a subtle shift disrupted the atmosphere. People noticed Pastor Jenkins's voice becoming unsteady, wobbling between strength and strain. His hand gripped the pulpit tighter than usual, but many simply assumed he was caught up in the emotion of his sermon. Then, in a moment that felt unreal, his body gave out. He collapsed forward, and the sanctuary erupted into immediate chaos. Screams filled the air, and people pushed through pews to reach him, fearing the worst. Witnesses later said it felt like time slowed to a crawl as they watched their beloved pastor fall. Medical workers who happened to be in the congregation rushed to his side, checking his vitals while ushers tried to calm the terrified crowd. The race to save him and the hospital's tense silence. Within minutes, paramedics burst through the church doors, transforming the sacred atmosphere into an emergency scene. The choir that had been singing moments earlier stood frozen, tears streaming as they watched the medical team prepare to move Pastor Jenkins. Members clung to each other, whispering prayers, pleading with God for mercy. As flashing red and blue lights painted the church walls, many congregants followed outside, unable to disconnect from what they had just witnessed. At the hospital, the urgency continued. Doctors worked quickly to stabilize him, but the information they shared was painfully minimal. Critical, but alive, was all they offered. That silence settled heavily over the community, creating a mixture of hope and dread. Inside the ice, his family remained glued to his side, refusing sleep, refusing to leave, and refusing to accept anything except a miracle. The uncertainty felt suffocating. Social media erupts and rumors take flight. The moment videos from inside the sanctuary hit social media, everything exploded. In seconds, the story spread beyond the walls of the church and into the digital world, where emotions, opinions, and assumptions collided. Hashtags like #PrayForJenkins and #StandWithFellowship trended almost immediately as people expressed shock, sympathy, and hope. Thousands sent prayers, encouraging words, and testimonies about how the pastor had touched their lives. But alongside the love came something far more complicated: whispers, speculation, and rumors. With no official updates from medical staff or church leadership, people began filling the silence with their own interpretations. Some suggested he had been hiding a health condition. Others blamed burnout or emotional strain. A few even speculated about ministry conflicts. Social media magnified every theory, turning one medical emergency into a national conversation. The internet had created a tidal wave of concern, curiosity, and conjecture, stretching the story far beyond its original moment and leaving the church scrambling to keep truth and fear separated. Signs of exhaustion and the burden of leadership. As the story spread, people began looking back over Pastor Jenkins' recent schedule, and what they discovered painted a clearer picture. It became evident he had been pushing himself far beyond what most would consider sustainable. He had been traveling across states, preaching multiple times a week, attending leadership meetings, participating in events, and handling music commitments, all while counseling individuals and managing a large congregation. Insiders admitted that he had been showing signs of exhaustion for some time, but continued pushing forward, insisting that the work of ministry couldn't wait. His dedication, while admirable, revealed the silent pressure pastors carry. The belief that stepping back means letting people down. His collapse forced people to confront the reality that spiritual leaders often sacrifice their health to serve others. It sparked deep conversations about boundaries, recovery, and the unspoken expectation that pastors must always be strong. Hope in the ice and a community holding its breath. Inside the ice, the fight for his life slowed into a quiet, painful waiting game. Every small movement, a twitch, a shift of his hand, a brief moment of awareness, became a spark of hope for family members gathered around him. Doctors explained that the next 24 hours were crucial, urging everyone to remain patient. Outside, the gospel community came together in a powerful wave of unity. Fellow pastors, worship leaders, and gospel artists sent messages and recorded videos offering encouragement and calling for prayer. Meanwhile, back at his home church, members refused to go home. They gathered outside the building with candles, forming circles of prayer, singing softly through tears, holding on to faith even when fear tried to overwhelm them. For many, the thought of losing their pastor was unimaginable. The hospital felt like the center of a spiritual and emotional battlefield where medicine worked inside and hope fought outside. The public debate and division in the gospel community. Despite the overwhelming display of love, a different conversation began brewing online, one that revealed deep tensions within the gospel community. Some individuals argued that the church owed the public more transparency, believing that silence created unnecessary panic. Others pushed back, insisting that the family deserved privacy and that people should focus on prayer instead of demanding details. A growing group began discussing the hidden pressures placed on pastors, especially leaders of large congregations. They pointed out that the expectations placed on spiritual leaders are often unrealistic, leaving them emotionally drained and physically vulnerable. This incident sparked debates about burnout, pastoral accountability, and whether churches unknowingly benefit from their leaders' overwork. The compassionate voices and the critical voices clashed, creating a divide between those who wanted answers and those who believed faith should be enough. What began as concern for Pastor Jenkins quickly became a reflection of broader issues within church culture, a spiritual reckoning and lessons in human limits. As the community continued praying and waiting, something deeper began to take shape, a collective spiritual reckoning. For many, the collapse was a wake-up call, a reminder that even the most devoted leaders are human beings with emotional, physical, and spiritual limits. Some saw the moment as a divine nudge for congregations to stop placing impossible expectations on pastors. Others viewed it as a lesson in humility, urging leaders to prioritize self-care rather than carrying the world on their shoulders. Still, opinions varied. Some believed this crisis was a test of faith, a moment calling the church to unity and compassion. Others took it as an opportunity to question long-standing cultural norms around work, ministry, and leadership. Either way, the incident triggered deep reflection, forcing people to examine what it really means to lead, to follow, and to support one another. The collapse that changed more than a sermon. What happened that morning became far more significant than a sudden fall at the pulpit. It became a symbol of the unseen pressures, private battles, and emotional strain carried by spiritual leaders. The support, the arguments, the grief, and the prayers all revealed how deeply Pastor Jenkins's life and work had touched people. His uncertain recovery created a sense of vulnerability that rippled through the gospel community. In just a few minutes, a routine Sunday turned into a transformative moment, one that challenged assumptions about strength, faith, leadership, and human limitation. The incident reminded everyone that even the most powerful voices can grow tired, and even the most dedicated hearts need rest. Whatever the future holds, the conversation sparked by his collapse will continue to echo, pushing churches to rethink how they support their leaders and how they share the burdens of ministry together.